friends. Welcome to Sky House Herbs podcast. I'm Ashley Ellenvoss, a clinical herbalist, and in this space, I share my knowledge and experience with plant medicine to help you on your own journey of healing and transformation. Join me in exploring the ancient wisdom of plant spirit medicine and how it can be used to heal the body, mind, and spirit. We'll talk to experts in the field and share stories from people who've been transformed by powerful plant allies. New episodes are released each Monday, so please subscribe. And now, let's explore this mystical world of plant medicine together. Hey everyone, welcome in. Today I am joined by my friend and special guest, Sarah Rossington, the hardcore therapist. And today we'll be talking about eating, food, body image, some ways that, tips that might be helpful to you when you're thinking about ways to love up your body a little bit more, especially as we head in towards the fall and winter season here in the Northern Hemisphere. I feel like that's when there's a lot more sort of food things come into view. So I'm really excited to have Sarah on to talk about this topic and to explore some ways and maybe some helpful tips for everyone. So welcome in, Sarah.
Thanks, Ashley. It's good to see you.
Good to see you too. Yeah, we had the great joy of leading a women's retreat in Costa Rica together was it May?
April.
April, somewhere in there. Yeah.
Yeah, here and there.
And we
Springtime.
it was springtime, beautiful. We were on the Caribbean coast and we did a number of things with like taste and touch. And because it was a women's retreat, this topic came up around the body and how we view ourselves. And so, I know Sarah's just really, not only is this her full-time job as a therapist, but this is also one of I think I'm going to say this for you, but I think it's like one of your passion projects is working with people and body image.
Yeah,
So.
for sure. Yeah. I mean, I think it's from my background, like my personal journey, but I also think, as a personal trainer for a long time and I did wellness programming, and I think it kind of stemmed from there. And like, if I cause people harm now, like understanding how like weight loss and weight management programs can be harmful to people. And so I think it really taught me a lot about where I want to go and how I want to help people with that.
Yeah. So tell everyone who's listening um, a little bit about your training. Like where did you go to school? What kind of jobs did you take, and what kind of resources have been really supportive for you in this study?
Yeah, so I have kind of like a wild story. I feel like I started as an art major in college. I went to Wayne State, which is in Detroit. I went to graduate school at the School of the Art Institute of Chicago and taught art for a number of years. Then went and got another graduate degree at Eastern Michigan in art education. I was teaching art. And then I was an athlete growing up, and I really got into the idea of personal training and understanding food and understanding what it was doing to my body. I have some autoimmune issues. And so that for me, that became like a really important piece. I continued teaching, and then I started doing adventure-based counseling, which then led me to a master's in school counseling and mental health counseling. And about 2 years ago, I moved completely out of school into mental health counseling. I went to Wayne State again for graduate school. I've done training kind of all over. I'm an intuitive eating certified counselor. So I had to do that through intuitive eating. You have to actually do like a pretty extensive program with that. I also have I'm a certified functional medicine mental health practitioner, and eating disorders and disordered eating certifications through PESI, which is like one of the places where you can do that for mental health. So that's kind of the like weird place for how I got here.
Yeah. And I think, one of the things from just, being in the Bhakti yoga community with you and some work that I've done with you one-on-one, around some things that I was working on was the art piece, like bringing art in as
Yeah.
a therapy. Can you talk a little bit about that? Like, how does that work?
Oh, for sure. So because I have such an extensive art background, and I actually, in the 1990s, I actually worked with an art therapist. We co-taught a class together, and she taught me how to use art therapy with working with kids in our classroom. So I did that. What I then did was, while I was doing some of my studies, I was like how can I incorporate what I love into what I do? So I really looked at places, especially body image and like kind of that negative self-talk that we have. And I started doing work around like our inner critic and our inner muse and understanding where, those voices are coming from. And so I had people create that so that they can make it however they want. I incorporate writing. Sometimes I'll do other things with art therapy. Like right now, I'm doing a lot of stuff with affirmations in
Mm.
art therapy with kids specifically. So I just try to add it in. I try to actually do whatever my clients want. Like if they're like, I am absolutely not going to do art, take that out. But
Yeah,
yeah, I add that and I'll add movement. I'm certified in yoga and meditation, so I might add some of that into it as well. So it's really what my clients need, and then I go from there.
that's great. Yeah, so you're able to kind of read the room, like what's going to
It's
make the most
gonna
sense
make
for
the
this
most sense
client.
and have the most impact, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's what the important thing is really, creating that rapport with someone to understand where it might be useful and maybe like unlock something that they weren't aware of.
Yeah. Let's go back to the inner critic. And
Yeah.
what was the other one?
Inner muse.
The inner muse and the inner critic. So in the context of looking at body image disorders or eating disorders, or I think we now call it more like disordered eating.
Mhm.
Um, how does what is the role of the muse and the inner critic?
So I think that our inner critic is so loud. And if we have issues, like, I mean, I like to be transparent with my clients and I'm transparent with you. Like definitely have had body image my whole life and issues with, restricting or overeating or binge exercising. So my inner critic is loud. I actually did a TED talk when I was a teacher. We had like teacher TED talks at our school. And one of them was on, I Hate My Stomach, A Tale of a Fourth Grade Nothing, right? And I talked about when I was in fourth grade, I started hanging out with older girls, and they told me that if I didn't hate something about my body, I was going to, I was like stuck up.
Hmm.
And so I didn't know what to pick. So I picked my stomach because I noticed like my stomach, I was an anxious kid. So I noticed like I'd get a lot of stomach aches and like I'd get bloating. I had a difficulty going to the bathroom. So I was like, I hate my stomach. And I became so obsessive about that. But it was really like this inner critic about like having this like bloated fat stomach. And so I constantly, every time I would try on clothes, every time I would maybe not fit into something anymore because our bodies change. My inner critic came really loud. And so what I've found when I work with clients and when I work with myself, I say, hey, that inner critic is there. We're just going to try to quiet it. We can't make it totally go away, but we can make sure that it's quieter. We need to make sure our inner muse gets louder because oftentimes our inner muse is really, really quiet. And so our inner muse is what makes us authentically ourselves. And like while we were in Costa Rica, we found out that like my inner muse is water, right? So
Mm.
just a very funny thing because I was terrified of water. Um, and and I think I was really thinking about it. I wrote about it and afterwards, and I was like, this is the only place that I feel weightless.
Mm.
Water makes me weightless. It makes me not so focused on my body. And so when I'm having these moments where I'm really feeling, oh, like I hate saying this, but like this is my critic saying like, oh, you're so fat, you're not good enough, you're this. I think about that weightlessness and that feeling of peace that I am in water, and I meditate on that. And I try to get my inner muse to get louder to quiet that inner critic.
Ah, that's great. Because yeah, it's kind of like there's only enough space usually for one of those voices to talk at a time.
Yeah.
So it's like getting the muse to like step to the front of the stage. Yeah. What
Yeah.
other
And
muses have you heard from clients? Like, are there any other kind of interesting images that have come up for other women or clients?
yeah, so I'm working with a woman right now, and her inner muse is air, which I found really interesting. Like she talks about like really liking how air blowing on her skin feels, and she like describes it and how like it makes the sound it makes. And I'm like, that's your muse. Air is your muse. So whenever you're feeling down about how you're looking or feeling and you're just feeling really heavy, think about that airiness that could
Mm.
come from within you. And it has been really powerful for her. Trees are always a great muse. I know that trees and
I love
planners
trees.
your thing, but those are also really great. And I talk about like how amazing trees are and their grounding. And would you ever talk bad about a tree that is rooted and grounded and supportive? And that's what our bodies are. They're supporting all of our things, all of our organs, all of our everything. So we're, to think of it in that way rather than, again, I'm oftentimes people talk about this heaviness or they're just not enough or they just can't be enough. And so trying to figure out what that is. So oftentimes it seems to come from nature. Sometimes like I'll do it with younger clients who are like teens and they'll like pick like some sort of fairy or something like that. And I'm like, great, let's try to work with that. And it's pretty cool to see how different everyone is. When I tell people mine is water, they're like, what? Like, what do you do with that? Like, I
Yeah.
get in the bathtub. I don't know. I just do what I do. So,
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, so when you're working with people and you're having this conversation about the inner muse and the inner critic, you probably had a lot of clients tell you about their stories about kind of how they grew up, maybe how their body lack of body love started. And I know for a lot of the listeners who listen to my channel, I talk a lot about trauma from my experience growing up in an alcoholic home and how that really shaped, my experience of my body and what was safe and what was acceptable. How do you think, body image stuff, like from your experience as a therapist, like where do you see this coming from? Like where does
I
it
mean,
usually stem from?
a lot of it does stem from trauma. Like I try to remind when I'm working with parents, like kids birthing is trauma. Like that is their first experience of trauma, regardless of if you think of it as a trauma or anyone remembers, but that is that first experience. You kind of can't go without any kind of trauma in your life. It's just impossible. But we do there, obviously there's a lot of stories of a lot more trauma or how someone talked to them, or maybe like I give an example of when I was a kid and my brother actually just said something to me. I got teased a lot for having like really big teeth. It seems like a funny thing to do, but my brother said something to me. He saw a picture of me and it's like, I love you and your big teeth. And it really like brought up stuff for me. And I know like that's not that big of a deal compared to when we're talking about size and shape and things like that, when we're talking about body. But if we look at all the different ways that people have talked to us throughout our lives, most of the time I find that my clients who struggle with either an eating disorder or disordered eating, they are struggling from something that has happened where they have to be perfect, or they really are talking like their body is good and bad and all these things that are just really negative, but it is coming from usually from a place from childhood trauma. I hate saying that. It makes me feel bad that that's the truth, but I mean there's just a lot of it, and sometimes like parents just have no idea.
Hmm. Yeah. And I just think about like, I have two young girls. I know your kids are a little bit older, but you see these children growing up and how permeable they are. Like, they're so porous and they're so, the things you say can either build them up and give them confidence to do things that they might not otherwise do. And your words also have the ability to make them feel very small. And it's really, yeah, it's very hard as a parent to walk the fine line between discipline, like keeping things in order, um, and just, yeah, really protecting them from those types of comments, or even things that might seem really, might not seem like they would
Right.
make a difference, but then
Right, they
they
do.
somehow do.
Absolutely. Even if they're like compliments, like my daughter is 16 and she will talk about like my parents where they lived, there was a lot of like older people and they would always talk about how cute her figure is. And it just
Mhm.
really made her feel uncomfortable being around people who were constantly commenting about her body. And so
Mm.
it might even people might think it's a compliment, but it's still going to affect how you view yourself and think about yourself or how you interact with people.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. Because I think, like, older generations, it's like, oh, you're so cute, pinch the cheek, or, there's a lot of things that just seem very innocent. But, when teens are on social media and there's so much emphasis on the body and how it looks and what's considered to be beautiful and what's not, those things can really be kind of taken a little bit too, like, they can be, the sensitivity around that is really heightened.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the teenagers that I worked with any kind of eating disorder or disorder eating, I mean, it's when I explain to them that it's a form of self-harm, they find that really surprising. I don't think they think of it as self-harm because they're trying like, I was trying to do something good for my body. Like I'm only eating I have a
Mm,
client who's like, I won't eat white food or I won't eat, this. And I'm like, You're harming your body because you're letting food have power over you when you get to make all of these wonderful, beautiful choices for yourself. And she has really explained that social media, and she will show me in social media, like, I want to look like this, I want this. And I just think it's such a hard, it's just a hard time to be a teenager and to be in that time. And like, I mean, yeah, magazines and stuff like that, like growing up in the 90s, like obviously like heroin chic was like a thing and
oh, yeah.
supermodels really became a thing. But now it's like it's almost like you don't even know what anymore because it's this constant feed is happening all the time.
Ah, wow. That's true. So I mean, do you have any advice for parents of teens that might be listening? Like, what can they do to help maybe buffer their teens from some of this type of influence? Is there anything to do?
Yeah, I mean, I think that like open and honest communication, like I've told my daughter, I'll just use me as an example, but I've told my daughter how I've struggled with my own body image from, things I've heard my mom say to, social media to, aging, all those things and how I just struggle and it really affects me. And I worry that the same thing will happen to her. So I'm just transparent, like this is what's gone on with me
Mm.
and so we are like, I have an open dialogue with her so she can tell me when she's like feeling a certain way about like, her body or what people are saying about her body or, anything like that. And she's a dancer.
Mhm.
So there's a lot to go along with being a dancer. I mean, they're really exposed. And there's also like a body type to
Mm.
be a dancer. And so she really, we just have to have these honest conversations. And I think that's what parents have to do is I don't I don't think I can do anything about when she was 5 or 6 years old and she saw that I was working out nonstop. Like I did it. I can't help
Yeah.
it now. So but having a conversation where I'm like, I just didn't know better. I just didn't know what kind of harm I could have been doing, I think is helpful. So those honest conversations help. I do think limiting the amount of time kids are on social media is important. It's super hard to do. There's definitely I mean, I have clients who have kids and they put all these timers on things. I do not. It's not something I do with my kids. I let them make those choices for themselves. Some parents feel like that it's helpful to have that control. So I think that if that's something that you have kids who struggle with, my clients that I have who are struggling with body image, I actually ask them to take specific apps off of their phones
Uh-huh.
and they do, and they have, or unfollow.
I remember we talked about that
Yeah,
on the retreat about how, like, you just start following someone, it's pretty benign. And then all of a sudden, every time you scroll and you see that person, it brings up stuff.
for
And
sure.
for whatever reason, we feel like, well, I can't unfollow them. It's really hard, especially if you know the person, like
Yeah,
personally. But there's a new feature where what is it called? Unwatch
yeah,
or
unwatch or I don't know what it is. Like you can still be friends with them, but unfollow or they like you don't have to follow their stuff.
and then their
Something,
stories don't show up. Like there's
yeah.
certain, and so I started doing that for certain people that were triggers for me, where it would just, like launch me into like sort of a little bit of that inner critic voice, and
Mhm.
or the spiral, the downward death spiral. I'd be like, okay, I need to not do this anymore.
Yeah. I mean,
So
it's
even as
definitely a
adults,
thing.
we find ourselves doing that, right?
For sure. I mean, I know when we were talking about this, I think I might have been talking about there's this like I got it, like I love lifting weights. And so I was watching an influencer and I was like, oh, I want to like we're the same height. We could, I could our body types are athletic, they're similar. She's 25 years old. Like, no, no, I can't look like her. Like, like it's just different. And so I actually unfollowed her because it was becoming really difficult for me to see, to constantly see her and see how she moved. And I've
Mm,
been really working on trying to find influencers who do what like lifting and different kinds of things in our age range. I know
yeah.
I'm older than you, but like in our age range to see like if there's something that's better to watch. And some are okay and some also have their stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think it's good to be aware of that, self-aware of like, the things we're taking in that bring up those voices inside, and to try to find people that influence the muse, right? Like there's a number of women I follow, and when the stuff they post I find so inspiring. I'm like, this is a cool human. Like I really like what she's up to. And so, then that puts a little bit of the wind in my sails,
For sure.
rather than taking it out.
I
So
have found I'm sorry to interrupt, but I found that like following things that give me joy or that like are things that I love to do. So for instance, I've been following a lot more art, people who are making art on social media and just watching different things. I know I send those things to you all the
we
time. I'm
both
like,
do.
"Oh," I'm like, let's make this. So I mean, I do think that that's been really helpful. It's kind of changed my feeds, and that I think is helpful. So like, also I think that not focusing so much on the body and focusing on other things that bring you joy is a really
Ah,
positive thing that you can do for yourself.
mhm.
So, if it's reading, if it's quotes, if it's
Do you know what mine is, Sarah?
plants.
Well, yes. And sending you the memes about like, I have too many plants. Like there's like thousands of memes about people who have plant addictions. But no, my happy spot on Instagram are little goats and sheep. Like
Oh
the
yeah, those are
miniature
awesome.
goats and sheep that like
Yeah.
are hopping through fields and like snuggling in the sun, and like I don't know, like that just does it. So I like it's like every five things when I scroll are like little lambs and sheep and goats. It's
That's so funny. Mine have been now those little miniature cows. Do you know which ones I'm
Mhm.
talking? They're really shaggy.
Yes,
Yeah,
those are so
I'm kind of
cute.
obsessed with those.
Yeah, yeah, and that's like a very different experience than 5 years ago when I was on social media. Like it was a very different feed. So I feel like you've really helped me in just, yeah, like I think maturing too, you just start to realize like what feels good and what's actually good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you.
So
I
that,
hope I can help you.
of course, yeah, no, I feel like, one of the things we've both been into bhakti. I know you quite a bit longer, but I feel like, and also recovery. Like you've been in Al-Anon, right?
Al-Anon for a long time.
For a
Yeah.
long time, and you led one of the bhakti recovery groups, was
Yeah,
the
I did an
sages,
Al-Anon. Yeah, I did an
Al-Anon
Al-Anon
groups.
group.
And I feel like, one of the things that's helped me with my own body image issues and eating disorders that I had, really more in my teens and early 20s, was having faith in something greater than myself.
Mhm.
Like
Yeah.
like, and not just the lip service of like, there's something greater that's a smart organizing force, but like, no, I actually feel a relationship with some power that's greater than me, that would be so sad. Like there's this saying in Italian, Sicilian dialect, from where my grandmother's family is from. And I forget how to say it in Sicilian, but it's basically like, don't make Jesus cry. Like, it's like this little saying that's like, don't you do something not nice, don't make Jesus cry. Like it's a little bit of that
Yeah.
guilt, but it's
Yeah.
also really sweet, because then, and my grandmother said when she would tease her sister, her mom would say, "Oh, honey, don't make Jesus cry." But it's like there's something bigger than you.
Right.
And, I feel like when we're in that mode of self-harm with restricting or binging, like to think about a higher power and like how like Jesus, Buddha, Krishna would be very sad to
Mhm.
watch us do this to our sweet little bodies, right?
100%. I think that's such a excellent point. You know, Raghunath from Wisdom of the Sages always says we're just a bag of blood,
Mm.
which I think is like, I'm like, ew, gross. But at the same time, it's kind of true. Like if we start celebrating our bodies for things that it actually does rather than things that, you know, maybe it doesn't look how you want it to look or whatever,
Mhm.
it's amazing. Like it's an amazing, amazing thing. And you know, that's what I have clients concentrate on. I do have quite a few clients who are either Krishna conscious or also like I don't know why, but I have a number of like Christians and Mormons and you know other faiths that I'm like I do bring God into the equation when we're talking about therapy. And then yeah, same vein, it's like you're a perfect soul.
Mm.
Why would you want to harm a perfect soul? God doesn't want you to harm a perfect soul.
Yeah. I love that. And God made us in all these different shapes and colors, you know? And so why would we be so hard on ourselves to try to fit into just one shape and color or like, you know, one model of what we think beauty is supposed to look like? When there's this, it's like, you know, the garden. Like I look out into my garden, I'm like, you know, every plant is so different. Even plants in the same species have
Yeah,
variations. And like we celebrate that in a garden. We celebrate the diversity in a garden. But somehow when it comes to our own self-talk, we sometimes have a harder time celebrating, you know, like the little things that are a little odd about us that actually make us beautiful in some kind of charming way.
no, totally. You know, you just made me think of like while we were on the retreat with all those women, there was like 23 of us, right?
Yep.
23. I don't think I thought about my body at all.
Mm,
And I think because we were not focusing on the body and we were focusing on spirit and we were focusing on love, that it takes away that need to want to control our bodies.
mm, mhm. Yeah. Yeah. And I think, you know, we were kind of talking before we started recording about tips for loving our body more. Like, what are the positive things we can do to help us grow into a deeper, loving relationship with our bodies? And so, you know, what you said is like, what does your body do well? You know, like
Yeah,
gratitude for the things your body does well. And the thing that was coming up for me is like, could be a good second is like, who are you associating with? Like,
absolutely.
who are you surrounding yourself with and what images and social media like that has a big impact too, right?
Yes, 100%. So, and then my third is like, how are you nourishing your body?
Hmm.
Right. So, you know, so what are you feeding it, you know, visually? What are you feeding it mentally? And then what are you actually nourishing your body with? Those are always my things I go to. And, you know, like I love candy. Like, like I have no problem saying that. October is the most difficult month of the year for me. Like I know there's like some statistic that between Thanksgiving and Christmas, the average American gains 7 to 15 pounds.
Hmm.
Like up to that. Mine is 100% is Halloween is candy, right? And you know, and I have been journaling my food, which again, I'm really careful about that because it can lead to disordered eating or eating disorders being so focused on calorie counting, what you're eating and all of that. But I don't know, as I've aged at least, and I actually talked to another woman today that I was working with about how like certain foods just don't make you feel good. And like it doesn't make you feel mentally well. And it just, and you like, yeah. So like journaling food and like what's going on with my body before I eat and then what's going on after. I also think people have such a hard time like think about like what if you didn't water a plant? You got to like drink
Hmm.
water. People are so focused on coffee. I've never even tasted it, but I know people love the coffee.
I'm guilty of that one. Yeah.
But I think like, like like coffee it's actually, there's some really good properties in coffee, but it also, like, because of the caffeine, takes a lot out of your body. And
Hmm.
so, replenishing that with water is super important. So, I have clients, if they're in a place where they could look at that intuitive piece of eating, to record their food, like understanding their hunger cues, understanding, what their body needs, understanding when they're full, when they're hungry. Like, I talk a lot about like these scales of eating. And like, I'm like, a 10 is like Thanksgiving, you have to unbutton your pants full, and then 0, you're going to punch someone in the face hungry, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's really important to really kind of stay between that, like 6 and 3 all day long.
Mm.
Never too hungry and never too full. Because if you feel like that, then you're so focused on your body.
Yeah.
And then and in a negative way. Like, I'm so hungry, I got it. Like, I can't focus on anything else. I need to eat. Or I'm so full, I can't, I want to, like, I don't know, that's me. I always want to unbutton my pants when I eat too much. So that's something I've been definitely talking to more with people,
Yeah.
um, is understanding that piece.
Yeah, that self-awareness piece, because it's like, it takes that extra beat to be like, okay, how am I feeling right now? Like, what does my body need right now? And you said the word nourishment. Say more about that. Like, what is nourishment? Is
I
that
think, yeah, I think it's different from everyone. And that's why, like, when people are like, well, like, I try to eat, and I hate this. This is like my thing. I'm like, I try to eat really good. And I'm like, what does that mean? Why are you putting labels on food as being good or bad? There, it's food, right? So
Mm,
nourishing your body in a way. So, like, on National Donut Day, Layla wanted to have donuts. Having a donut with my daughter was super nourishing for my body.
mm,
It was an enjoyable experience. I wasn't doing it to overeat. I wasn't doing it to punish myself. I was doing it to enjoy that experience with my daughter. To me, that's nourishing food.
beautiful.
I mean, so, I think that there's so many different ways to look at it. I also think nourishing your body in a way that works for your body. So there's certain foods that I can't eat that people think of as healthy, right? Like, I can't eat salad right now. Gives me horrible heartburn, makes me feel yucky, like bloated, gassy, like the whole bit. Like, understanding, like, even if it seems like it's good food, it might not be nourishing for your body. So I think those are important things. So I work when I work with people and I'm talking about that kind of stuff, when I'm having people really look at what nourishment means, and like how, like, if they're watching TV or if they're on their phone or if they're eating it in their car, that is not nourishing.
Mm,
You're so focused on everything else that's going around you. So, like, I don't know. I mean, I'm guilty of eating in my car. I've done it plenty of times. And I know on a road trip, I'm like, I want a pretzel ride at every turn. Like, that's like, was like always my thing. So, but knowing, like, having a space and like honoring that space to eat is how you nourish yourself.
Yeah. It's interesting. One thing I started doing just in the last week was lighting a candle at the dinner table. It's so small. It's such a small thing. It's just a single candle. But after I cook a meal, I light the candle on the dinner table. And to me, it just is like, okay, this is now a sacred time and a sacred space. And we're eating a meal that I've done my best to prepare to make it tasty and healthy. And that doesn't always, it's not always true for everyone. But that little thing for me has been like a trick. And that puts me back into a mindset of like relaxation and paying attention.
Mhm.
Um,
That's
so
awesome.
yeah.
That's a great tip. I found, because I end up having to eat at my office a lot because of my schedule. I work very long days. So I don't use my desk as a desk to do work. My desk is like my meal
Mm,
place. So I actually have like a nice picture on the table. I don't have anything else around. And I sit and I have my water and I take my like takeout containers. Like, I'll put them, if I'm having a takeout container, or even like I put it on a plate.
ah,
And so I think just even like presenting your food in a way like you deserve to eat, like, well and nice, like eating it out of a takeout container doesn't have the same effect as putting it on a plate and like presenting it to yourself.
Totally. That's such a great point. It's such a simple thing, but yeah, it's a very different eating experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Very,
like making sure you have that space. Cause I mean, like, I'm sure a lot of people who are, viewing you, they probably can't always eat at the dining room table or the kitchen table. And so, how can you create that space to still make it a sacred, thing to do?
mhm.
And so that's mine is I don't use my desk for anything else. Like if I'm on my computer and I'm doing notes, I'm doing it on my couch. I'm doing it somewhere else. That table is just for eating. And I know that's again, I'm lucky enough that I have a couch and chairs in different places that I can set the floor. But I still like, I think you can even do that if you have like a computer and things around you. You just put it you make a spot, put a napkin out and make it a little placemat, like do something special. My colleague puts he has like carnations because carnations like really last long for some reason. Like when he eats the carnations are next to him. It's so nice. So he has it out when he's doing therapy, but it's also part of it. So I think that there's different things that you can do so it's not just this thing that I have to do. And I
Yeah.
think that creates issues with digestion and it creates issues with kind of being mean to your body is like not giving yourself or thinking enough of yourself to honor yourself the time to eat.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. So one more thing before we go, because we know that we are heading into October, November, December. Do you have maybe one thing before we let people know more about you and how to find you and get in touch with you? But do you have one tip for people going into the holiday season? Like maybe one thing that's worked well for you or for clients to keep you in a very sort of body positive type of state?
So if you've been in the position and I have been in this position where I've gained weight, my first thing I tell people to do, buy yourself new underwear. I know that sounds so silly, but like having good, nice underwear, regardless, it helps you feel just better in your clothes. So I
Mm,
know that might be a really silly thing,
I love
but
that thing. That's great.
yeah, it's really an important thing because you know, uh, you know, being in perimenopause, menopause, our bodies will fluctuate up to 20 pounds. It's very normal.
Mm,
If you don't have underwear that fits you and you're trying to struggle and you can feel it and it's just not good. Also wear clothes that fit you. Like
mm.
just it's okay. It's okay to have to buy new clothes. You'll feel better if your pants aren't strangling you. Like it's just how it is. So those would be things, those would be like one main thing I would say. And when it comes to food, if you love something, eat it. So if you get really excited about Thanksgiving and you love pumpkin pie, have a piece of pumpkin pie. It's not bad. That pumpkin pie is not doing anything bad to you. It is food. Sitting and enjoying your family and being with your family and having that experience of eating will will not, you will not gain a ton of weight from. I do think that making sure that you stay active is really important. And then, like crowd out foods that are not that interesting to you. So if it's, I don't know, like as a vegetarian, if I was going to a house, a meat eater's house, I mean, like I love macaroni and cheese. I love, I love, cookies and things like that. I concentrate on like what health, like I hate saying healthy, but what like fruits and vegetables can I eat before I eat those things that are more decadent or
Yeah.
special, but still enjoying those special things because like for me, I love cranberry sauce. It's the only time of year I eat cranberry sauce. I make it, I eat it because I love it. And I don't have it again the rest of the year. It's just one of those things. So enjoy those things.
I love that. Yeah, I love because it's like I think we can what you've really spoken a lot to is this labeling of things as good or bad, foods as good or bad. And when we actually just say no, it's just food. And if you love the food and enjoy it, like make a relationship with it. And if there's a food that you don't care for that much, like you don't have to have a relationship with it. Find the ones that you love that nourish you, that when you eat it, you feel really, really good. I think Like, that's such a great reframe for so many people who, yeah, I think like myself used to go into like very strict categorization, and then that has a whole that has a
No,
whole slippery slope that you can go down.
for sure.
Yeah.
And I mean, I did the same things, and I can't tell you how many women that I work with talk about it, and talk about like just getting them to remove I'm eating good today. No,
Mm,
no, you're eating today.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
great.
So that's something that I think is super helpful this time of the year. So make sure
Yeah.
you wear clothes that fit you too.
Yes, and cute underwear.
Cute underwear, like
Oh,
everything.
I love it. Thank you so much. This has been wonderful. And so tell people how they can find you, and, kind of, yeah, what is the best way people can reach you?
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram all the time. The Hardcore Therapist is how you find me. My website is also thehardcoretherapist.com. Easy to find me. You can connect with me on there. You can DM me on Instagram. If you have questions for me, I am starting a podcast. When this airs, my podcast will be going. So
Yay.
what I do is I work on one specific question each week and just spend my whole time on that question. So if anyone ever has questions for me or anything, I'm more than happy to answer them. So yeah, Instagram, I think, is actually the best way to get a hold of me first.
Okay, great. And are you seeing clients? Are you taking clients if any of our listeners would like to work with you one-on-one in counseling
Yeah, I
type
am
of
still
dynamic?
taking clients. I am working on doing a group program called Unstuck. I don't think it's going to go until January 1st,
Mhm.
but if anyone's interested in doing group programs, I'm really excited about this. It's all about getting yourself unstuck from behaviors that aren't working for you. So yeah, you can totally get a hold of me, and if we can fit it into each other's schedules, I'm more than happy to see people.
Great, great. Well, thank you so much, Sarah, for being here. This was a great
Yeah,
conversation. I'm
yeah,
going to
for sure.
walk away with a few new thoughts and ways of approaching my meals if I do have to eat somewhere out. Yeah, I'll bring a plate along. Why not? Just put it on a plate. So
Who cares?
I love it. Oh, well, thank you so much.
Thank
Enjoy the rest
you.
of your day. And thanks
You.
everyone for watching. If you haven't already subscribed to my channel, please, it's just a click. It helps other people find me. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, and also share it. If you know anyone that you think might benefit from this conversation, there's a share button, and then you can copy the link and share it wherever you'd like. So thank you all. Thank you, Sarah. And
Ashley.
see you again soon.
You. Bye.
Bye.